Beneath the resplendent facade of Versailles, Queen Isabella of Austria held court. Her beauty, once the envy of Europe, was now a thing of nightmares. Mercury had sculpted her features into a death mask of perfection, but it could not stop the decay of her mind. Her days were spent in the labyrinthine halls of Versailles, her nights in the company of fountains. There were times when the phantom in the mirror seemed to reach out, to claw its way through the looking glass. If Isabella's mind was truly shattered, then her vast Habsburg lands would be ripe for the taking. Secretly, she wrote to Isabella's brother, the Holy Roman Emperor, suggesting that the Queen might be better cared for in Vienna, in darkened rooms where flickering candlelight danced with shadows. Queen Isabella stared back at a world she could no longer touch. In the cold embrace of her gilded cage, she reigned over nothing but fountains, a tragic monument to vanity's curse. Ferdinand received the letter with his sister's lands already earmarked for his own gain, and so the stage was set for yet another transaction of the sisterhood. And sometimes her eyes, blazing with unholy light, would stare straight through people, as if seeing the grime beneath their skin. Whispers followed her like a shroud, and soon the entire court was tainted with fear, yet still she clung to the hope offered by her visitor from England, never realizing that the solace she sought was in fact her torment, that the touch which hid her flaws also leached away her soul. She spoke of conspiracies, of plots hatched by the very stones of the palace, of treachery lurking in tapestries. No one dared question her, not even her loyal ladies-in-waiting, for the Queen's fits had become violent. Her brother, upon seeing her, smiled. Beauty, it seemed, had finally succumbed to the grave. Once, in the height of one such fit, she tore a tapestry depicting the birth of Venus, screaming, "She is beautiful. They all think her beautiful. But she is rotten, like me." After that, no one dared speak of beauty to or about her. Then came the day when the sun did not rise. Paris awoke to grey skies and the stench of stale waste. Turning aside her tears, he reminded her of her former glory, of the day she had arrived in France, a vision of loveliness. "You can be that woman again," he promised, offering her a vial of mercury. She recoiled as if from a viper, then sank to her knees before him, begging for his help. With a sigh, Walsingham took pity on her. Though he never divulged the source, he procured more of the deadly cream. Perhaps he believed he could control her, or perhaps he simply liked the taste of power. Queen Isabella, they said, had ordered the river Seine diverted to fill the royal toilets. Now the river ran black and still. People talked of curses and comets, but no one ventured to the palace. That is, until Sir Francis Walsingham arrived, sent by Queen Elizabeth I to secure an alliance with the new French king. He had no inkling of the horror that awaited him. Entering the Queen's apartments, he found her seated before a mirror, her face bare, revealing the horror within. Mercury had not touched her skin, and it was a sight that would haunt his nightmares. A canvas of wrinkles, sores, and a mouth twisted in a silent scream. She rose, her eyes blazing, and embraced him, her touch colder than death. "You have come," she rasped, "to mock me, to laugh." Walsingham, ever the pragmatist, saw not a madwoman but a pawn. The alliance he had come for, he reasoned, was still worth striking. As the years passed, Isabella's condition worsened. She grew thinner, more reclusive, her face forever hidden behind a veil of white lead. Meanwhile, rumors of her strange behavior reached Queen Elizabeth, who saw an opportunity. When Isabella finally arrived in Vienna, her features were a flawless mask of lead and bone, her eyes vacant pools reflecting nothing back. Our story ends not with the Queen's demise, but with a mirror's gleam. There are some comments from previous videos that I would like to address because it seems that some viewers don't quite understand how the story of Mary, Queen of Scots, and that of Elizabeth I are connected. The first comment is from a video about Mary, Queen of Scots. This person says, "What happened to Elizabeth I after Mary was executed? Did she die right away?" This person says, "This whole video made me sad. Imagine being related to both these women. Talk about pressure. How did Elizabeth escape the curse? God, fate, destiny. Call it what you will. But Elizabeth had a deep sense of duty to her people. She felt it was her job to protect England from the Catholic conspiracy that threatened to engulf it. Well, I think Elizabeth took the idea of royal duty very seriously. Well, we can't know for sure, but I personally believe that she did love him at one point, but it was never returned. This person says, I wonder why Elizabeth was not interested in marrying any of these men. She had just come to power and needed an alliance. Well, Elizabeth was interested in marrying several of these men, but none of the deals ever went through. She was actually married 4 times, but all 4 of her husbands were killed before she took the throne. Francis, Duke of Suffolk, died of tuberculosis. Philip of Spain was killed in battle. Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, died of a stroke, and Thomas Seymour, brother of Jane Seymour, died while trying to escape after being accused of treason. So you can see it was hardly Elizabeth's fault that she was never married. Fate, destiny, God, call it what you will. You could say that Elizabeth was simply cursed in matters of love. Dudley was completely in love with his wife, Amy, and he never stopped loving her, not even after she died. Elizabeth may have realized this, but she still kept Dudley close to her side, perhaps hoping that one day he would marry again and produce an heir. When that didn't happen, she may have despaired of ever having a child and decided to remain alone, never marrying. She was determined to do everything she could to secure her position as queen, and that included making sure that Mary, Queen of Scots, who was a threat to her throne, would never take the English crown. Now, whether or not Elizabeth was aware of the C word, that is the Catholic conspiracy against her, we may never know. But even if she wasn't aware of it, she knew perfectly well that Mary was a danger to her throne. As I've said many times before, Mary was willing to do whatever it took to get the crown, including murdering her husband, which was not a crime in those days, or plotting with a cousin, the Italian, the Earl of Bothwell, to kill David Rizzio, who was an Italian musician and secretary to Mary, Queen of Scots, and who was rumored to be the lover of Mary, Queen of Scots. When Mary murdered her husband, Lord Darnley, and Bothwell murdered Rizzio, Elizabeth considered this evidence enough to banish Mary from Scotland forever. No, she didn't. Elizabeth died in 1603. Mary, Queen of Scots, was executed in 1587. So Elizabeth lived another 16 years after Mary's death. Next comment is also from a video about Mary, Queen of Scots. Now, whether or not Elizabeth was superstitious, she was definitely influenced by the belief in witchcraft that was prevalent in those days. Remember that one of her counselors, John Dee, was obsessed with witchcraft and tried to use her goddaughter, the young Princess Amy Robsart, as a witch. In fact, he tried to use Amy to raise spirits and talk to the devil himself. Elizabeth never took this very seriously and eventually put a stop to it. But Elizabeth certainly believed that Mary was a threat to her security, and that executing Mary would save her from a lot of trouble. So when it comes to the curse, Elizabeth was not trying to avoid it. She was not cursed. Next, a comment from a video about Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester. This person says, did Elizabeth ever love Dudley? Next, a comment from a video about the suitors of Elizabeth I. Thanks for watching. On the night she vanished, not a single bell tolled. No storm marked her departure. No mourning veils were drawn. In the grand, abandoned halls of Saint-Germain-en-Laye, silence reigned like a sovereign more absolute than any king. Only one maid remained, a mute girl named Sabine who had once brushed Elizabeth's hair with trembling fingers. In 1625, nearly 50 years after Elizabeth's disappearance, the palace underwent renovations under King Louis XIII. One of the architects, a man of logic and angles, ordered the Queen Dowager's rooms to be reopened for conversion into guest apartments. The doors were unsealed. The dust was thick. The air was strangely still, untouched by age, as though time itself had forgotten the room. And there it stood, the mirror. No cracks marred its surface. No dust clung to its frame. It gleamed like it had been polished that very morning. But more curious still, it reflected nothing. Not the men, not the torches, not the room. Just black. The architect, Monsieur Desroches, an ardent skeptic, ordered it removed. 10 men tried. 10 failed. The mirror would not move. It would not break. Tools splintered. Glass did not yield. One man, in frustration, struck it with a hammer. He disappeared. No sound, no scream, just gone as if swallowed whole. The workers fled. The renovations were cancelled. The room was sealed once more, not with locks, but with prayers and iron. Word spread, the church investigated. They called it cursed. Theologians whispered of a gateway, a veil torn, a relic of pride and vanity now fused with something far older than mercury or madness. And then came the painter. He was a Flemish master, drawn not by belief but by obsession. He had heard of the mirror. He had studied the life of Elizabeth, the flawless beauty, the mercury paste, the whispers of reflections that moved when she did not. He had dreamed of her, painted her face in candlelight, haunted by a woman he never met. With bribery and wine, he gained access to the sealed chamber. He stood before the mirror for 1 hour, 2, then 3. And when he emerged, he had aged 10 years. His beard had grayed, his eyes had sunk, but in his hands he clutched a canvas. He never spoke again. The painting now resides in a private collection, its ownership secret, its image forbidden. It shows a woman seated before a mirror, her back turned to the viewer, but in the glass her reflection faces outward, smiling, watching, waiting. And behind her a second figure stands, a woman in white. Her eyes are black, her hands are outstretched. The brushwork is perfect. The atmosphere baroque, suffocating, rich with chiaroscuro shadows and dying light. And yet, no one can look upon it long. Viewers complain of nausea, of hearing whispers in a language they do not know. Some claim to see the reflection move. One man gouged out his eyes. One woman walked into a lake and never resurfaced. They say Elizabeth never died, that she crossed into a place between where beauty is agony, and time stands still, that she waits behind every mirror, searching for those vain enough, broken enough to listen. And when they do, she offers them the same gift, a cream, shimmering like moonlight, a whisper, apply only at dusk. It was she who first discovered the Queen's chambers empty, her bed unslept in, her robes still warm, but the mirror pulsed. It shimmered faintly in the darkened room, humming like breath against a cold window pane. Its surface was no longer reflective, but liquid and deep like oil poured over the surface of a forgotten well. Sabine, though she could not speak, tried to scream. What she saw in that cursed glass was not her mistress nor her queen, but something else wearing her face drifting slowly in a black ocean beneath the surface. Her eyes opened wide. Her skin unmarred, her lips whispering soundless truths. The court declared it a disappearance, a tragic vanishing of a widowed queen driven mad by sorrow. Catherine de' Medici, with terrifying efficiency, sealed the chambers, silenced the servants and decreed a holy vigil. But no priest dared enter the queen's room. Not one soul was brave or foolish enough to face the mirror. Decades passed. Elizabeth became a rumor, then a myth. They called her La Reine Blanche, the White Queen. Her legend whispered by hearth fires and behind closed doors. Children were warned not to speak to mirrors after sunset, lest they see her eyes watching from beyond. Some said she had fled to a convent. Others believed she had died of poison, or madness, or heartbreak. But Sabine knew. She never spoke again, not from fear, but from knowing. In the deep folds of her silence, she held the truth like a splinter in her heart. She lived until the age of 72, and every evening before sunset, she lit a candle outside the locked doors of Elizabeth's chambers. She never looked inside. She never touched the handle, but she lit the flame and she prayed, though she no longer believed in God, for she had seen something that had no name. Yet the story does not sleep, and truth, real or imagined, has a way of seeping through the cracks of time. If you like your fiction dark, atmospheric and deeply unsettling, you ray in for a treat, because today we are delving into a chilling tale that blurs the lines between reality and nightmare. But these doppelgangers aren't just mere lookalikes. They're doppelgangers. They're twisted, grotesque parodies of the observer's true selves, mirroring their every move. Our story begins with a mysterious antique compact. Nothing particularly special except for one peculiar detail. Whoever opens it is immediately transported to a desolate Victorian street. But wait, there's more. In the distance, they see their own doppelgangers walking towards them, as if they are being observed from afar. It reminds us of the power of the unknown, the things that lurk just beyond our perception, and the terrifying potential of our own minds. Prepare to be captivated by a narrative that seamlessly blends reality with the supernatural, leaving you questioning the very nature of existence. It is a haunting reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones that reflect back at us from the darkest depths of our own souls. As the story unfolds, the doppelgangers grow increasingly menacing, becoming more prominent, more lifelike, always mimicking, never touching. This haunting spectacle continues until the observer reaches the end of the street, where they confront a terrifying sight, the house they once called home. Anyone who gazes into its depths is confronted by their own ghostly apparition, a specter from their past. But the terror doesn't end there, for the observer soon discovers that there's no escape. The doppelgangers are not just figments of their imagination and insecurities, holding them captive in a world of their own creation until it's too late to escape. This haunting tale is a reminder of the power of trauma and the darkness that can lurk within the human psyche. It shows us that sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones we create in our own minds, and reality are suspended and the boundaries of life and death are blurred. If you enjoyed these stories and want to experience more of the same, make sure to check out our other videos. And if you dare, leave a comment below and let us know which tale left you feeling the most unsettled. But as they delve deeper into this mirror world, they begin to realize that it's not a reflection of their own memories, but a distorted, nightmarish version of them. The mirror acts as a conduit to the darkest recesses of the mind, pulling its victims into a vortex of their own making. Each time someone is pulled into this mirror, they find themselves in a world that's both familiar and strange. They are tangible presences, echoes of the past reaching out from the confines of that haunted house, now frozen in time, filled with spectral doppelgangers living out distorted versions of their former lives. It's a journey into the darkest recesses of the psyche, a confrontation with the parts of ourselves we try to hide away, and the mirror world until they can no longer tell which is which. It becomes a terrifying game of cat and mouse, as the characters try to outsmart the mirror's deadly game. The line between sanity and insanity blurs. Reality itself seems to warp and twist. It's a world where the past is trapped, unable to progress, forever repeating itself in a macabre dance of duplication. As the story reaches its climax, the observer realizes that these doppelgangers represent their own inner demons, their repressed memories and suppressed emotions given horrifying form. What makes this tale truly chilling is its ambiguity. We don't know whether our protagonist is truly going insane or whether he is experiencing a terrifying alternate reality. This story is a masterclass in building suspense and creating an atmosphere of dread. And if you thought that was scary, buckle up because we have another tale that will send shivers down your spine. Our story revolves around a sinister antique mirror. Nothing extraordinary at first glance, but it holds a dark secret. But this ghostly encounter isn't a what-time event. It's a doorway to a terrifying parallel world. A realm where the laws of physics they might see loved ones who have passed away or witness events from their past replayed like a haunting movie. It is as if the mirror is showing them the traumas and regrets they've buried deep within themselves, amplifying them into terrifying specters. As the story progresses, the mirror's hold on its victims grows stronger, blurring the line between the real world, but the true horror lies in the mirror's power to exploit their deepest fears. We've journeyed through tales that challenged the boundaries of reality and confronted the darkest corners of the human psyche. They say the last confirmed sighting occurred in 2021. A small art museum on the outskirts of Budapest unveiled a private collection of post-Renaissance artifacts, a mixture of forgotten relics, cracked oil paintings, and one peculiar item listed without a label. An oval mirror encased in oxidized gold filigree, its glass unusually dark. It hung in the corner of a dimly lit gallery titled Vanity and the Divine. The curator, a pragmatic woman named Dr. Katalin Horvath, insisted the mirror was not part of her original manifest. She blamed interns, misfiled records, a clerical oversight. But each time she tried to remove it from the wall, Something strange occurred. Tools failed, the hook would not loosen. Ladders collapsed. In the end, she left it where it was, muttering to herself that perhaps it was best to let the unknown sit quietly. Until the girl came. Her name was Anna, graduate student in art restoration. Soft-spoken, brilliant, obsessed with Baroque portraiture. She became enamored with the mirror. Not its frame, not its history, but the image within. She claimed it held an optical illusion she couldn't explain. At first glance, it reflected the gallery, but linger longer and the angles shifted, shadows curled inward. The paintings on the opposite wall appeared to wilt and move, and in the glass, she often saw herself, only not quite. The reflection wore a dress, yes, it mimicked her gestures, but it smiled. Just before she did, she began to stay late, too late. Security footage showed her seated before the mirror long after closing, unmoving. Her head tilted slightly as though listening. She stopped answering messages. Her friends said her skin grew paler, that her voice lost its warmth. She told them she was learning to see. Then, one night, the alarm tripped. When guards arrived, they found the gallery intact. The mirror stood alone. Anna's phone was discovered on the floor. Her coat remained draped over a chair. But she was gone, completely, as if she'd stepped out of frame. Surveillance footage showed only static during the hours she disappeared, except for one frame, buried in corrupted data, extracted later by a digital forensics team. In that single still frame, she is visible, standing directly in front of the mirror, but her reflection is facing away, looking deeper. And behind her, behind both figures, a third shape emerges. A woman in white, pale skin, black eyes, mouth slightly parted as if exhaling her first breath in. Centuries? That footage was sealed. The museum quietly closed the gallery. The mirror, gone. Some say it returned to France. Others believe it never left. And now we arrive at the final question, the question you may already be asking: was Queen Elizabeth ever real? The answer, as with all things soaked in shadow, is yes and no. History confirms she existed. Elizabeth of Austria, Queen of France, daughter of the Habsburg Empire. But official records mark her as modest, pious, quiet, a footnote beside louder figures. Her death is recorded as peaceful, her memory honorable. But that is not the story, because official history cannot hold the weight of a legend, of a woman consumed not by grief, but by the pursuit of something terrible and eternal. A woman who made a choice beneath silver moons and behind locked doors. A woman who looked into the mirror and refused to look away. The mirror remains. That much I can tell you. Sometimes it reveals itself to those who need it: artists, dreamers, the vain, the broken, the unloved. It doesn't beg for worship. It simply waits. And when you stand before a glass surface late at night, alone, you may notice a flicker. Your reflection may blink a half second too late. Your lips might part, though you made no sound. And somewhere, in the black behind your own eyes, you might hear her voice. I remember you. It's soft, distant, as though spoken through deep water. She remembers everyone who has looked, everyone who has wanted. And once she remembers, she never forgets. So the next time you pass a mirror in the dark, don't linger. Don't smile. And above all else, don't look twice, because this time, it might just answer.